This is Mari Robeson of Love Lulu Creative, a podcast that supports and celebrates artists and creative entrepreneurs while giving back to the community in a unique and meaningful way. This is episode number 36, and I'm so excited about today's episode. It was really a pleasure to get to interview international artist Gus Harper. I was thrilled when my friend Christine introduced us, and once I saw Gus's paintings, I was, of course, thought they were gorgeous. And then I saw his incredible murals that he paints, and I just knew I wanted to have him on the podcast. He has literally painted murals from Malibu to Malaysia, all over the world. And why he chooses to do that is so interesting. I think you guys are just really going to love this episode. Not only that, he is just such a joy. You can just feel his passion for what he's creating coming through in this interview. He's just such an inspiration, truly, and he offers some really great advice. So I know you will really enjoy this episode with a very talented Gus Harper. Hi, Gus. I'm thrilled to have you on the podcast today. And I'm always so deeply grateful to our mutual friend, Christine, because she knows so many amazing artists. So when she told me about you and I saw what you do, I was beyond excited to get to talk to you. So thank you so much for taking time out from your busy schedule to talk with us today.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I'm happy to participate.
So great. And so you are a fellow Californian, and are you currently, you're based where in LA are you?
I live in Venice Beach, and my studio is at the Santa Monica Airport. But today I find myself in Redondo Beach working on a mural. But that's just for a couple days.
You have a studio at the airport?
I do. It's an old hangar for an airplane, and it's right across the street from whoever the president is. Whenever the president comes to town, they land right across the street from my studios. It's always exciting.
Stop. That
Yeah,
sounds like a dream studio.
it is pretty cool. It's really
Wow.
tall. It has a
Yeah.
loft, and it's pretty big. Yeah, it's a nice space, and it's walking distance from my home, which is pretty neat.
Wow. And I bet you have a lot of lots of natural light when you open up the doors and stuff. So that sounds like,
Yeah, it's cool.
wow, that was a find in LA.
Yep, I have light, I have storage, and it's unusually affordable. So I will appreciate this as long as I can have it. I know it won't last forever, but
That is
I'm
great.
super grateful for it. And I actually had a art show in my studio. I usually, would have a show in a gallery or something, but I did one in my studio recently, and it worked out pretty well. It was big enough.
Is that where you had you had like a dinner party? I saw it on your
That's right.
Instagram.
Yep.
That was so
Yeah.
cool. I did that
Thanks.
too when I did a launch for my last collection. And I just had a little private dinner party. It was a really fun way to launch something. Oh my goodness. Okay, so where do I start? So did you grow up in LA
I grew up in Santa
originally?
Monica.
In
Yep.
Santa Monica? Okay. And
Yeah.
then yeah, big difference, I guess, Santa Monica and LA. And then where did you go to college? I think you mentioned you went to UCSB.
Yeah. I did. I went to 2 years at University of Oregon, and then I transferred to UC
Oh,
Santa Barbara. Yeah,
oh,
after going to Santa Monica High School first, of course.
oh,
So yep,
okay.
yep. But that was an awesome cultural learning experience, but doesn't really prepare you for the art world.
No, it doesn't. That's
Yeah.
why we have this podcast,
Yep.
the real world. So did you major in art when you were at
I had two majors. One was pre-law, and the other one was art studio. And which is funny because then I graduated college. I'm like, okay, now what?
right.
Wasn't anywhere prepared for anything. So I just walked out into the world. My first job was after getting my fancy degree. I was a pizza delivery guy.
Please don't tell me that because I have three daughters all getting ready to graduate from college.
Well,
And one of them works at a pizza place in San Francisco.
yeah, you have to do baby steps.
I know. So
I
that
think
is
it depends on what your degree is. If you
yeah.
have a degree in engineering, you're gonna have offers right out
Right.
the bat.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's true. So,
Yeah.
well, then what did happen other than doing the pizza delivery? Like where was the moment
Well,
that I think I'm going to do this as a living? I'm going to be an artist.
yeah, that was like one of those things that there was a lot of steps to get there. Um, it was an indirect path.
Mm.
But I had this dream of that, one day I'm going to be an artist, but then I kind of realized there is no one day. So let's just do it now.
Yeah.
So I did save up a little bit of money, working all kinds of odd jobs. I worked very odd jobs, and I would work them enough to pay my rent and cover my monthly nut. And then when I got to that point, then I'd spend the rest of the month making paintings. So I was responsible. I took care of myself and my economic needs. I lived very simply when I was, 22, 23 years old, just
Hmm.
to get
Hmm.
started. But I realized I wasn't a very good artist. Like I was just kind of
Mm.
all over the place. And for a lot of years, I'd paint in my bedroom, and then I lived with a guy who was a writer, so he thought it was cool that I was trying to be an artist. So he
Huh.
didn't mind that I put the paintings in the kitchen to dry at nighttime and whatever. He was all cool with that.
That's awesome.
But people would always ask me, "When are you gonna have your first show? When do you have a show?" And I was like, "I'm not ready. My stuff wasn't good. It really wasn't." So it wasn't until I was 27 that I was able to have the confidence to say, "Okay, fine. Now I will have my first ever show." So, and then I went rogue. I threw my own show. I didn't use a gallery or anything, and that set a precedent that has lasted my entire career.
Interesting. I was going to ask you about that. So was that in Santa Monica or was that in Santa Barbara where you
It
lived?
was in Marina Del Rey. I had moved to Santa Monica from Santa Barbara,
Hmm.
and my very first show was in the lobby of a advertising firm,
Mm, that's
and
a
they
good
just wanted to
place.
have. Yeah, it was actually really nice. It was a really cool location, and they were excited to have me put my art up in there. They just thought it made their place look cool, and they want to have cool events at their place to kind of raise their profile.
Hmm. Hmm.
And they got art on display for several months. And so then the next show after, so that went really well. I didn't. That was a really interesting experience, but it
Yeah.
took
So
it.
how did you do that? Did you walk in and say, hey, did you scope the place out and be like, I think
That was I think we're going back in time now, but I think I knew the owners of the place, and they offered it to me. They said, we like your art. Why don't you do it at our place? I'm like, okay. But that was like a call to action, because I'm like, oh, I guess here's the opportunity. I better say yes and get my act together
mm.
and get the paintings together.
Hmm.
And luckily, I had the work.
And were you
And
still feeling like you weren't very good at your artwork, or at this point, had you been working on it over and over and kind of developing your own style?
I definitely had developed my own style at that point, and it's really different from what I'm doing now.
Right, right.
Um, but I was excited about it. It was like I had put together a whole body of work, and it was cohesive, and I was super new to showing my stuff, and I didn't know what to expect. Like I hadn't even been in a group show at this point. I just it's funny looking back, because I am not married, but I used to be married at the time. And when I got married and we moved to LA, at the moment of our marriage, my ex-wife, she didn't have a job at the time, and I said, "Don't worry, I'll be an artist." Like I don't know what I was thinking, but but it worked out. Like I just jumped in. I went all in. I saved up a little bit of money so that I had like a little bit of a cushion. We lived very modestly, and because I went all in, I produced a lot of work. And because I produced a lot of work, then I got a lot of pieces up on walls all over town. And because a lot of work was all over town, people started seeing it, and then the energy would come back to me. So that's how it worked out for me.
Mm. And now you're like kind of doing that all over the world.
Yep. Yeah. So I
It's
started in Marina
expanded
Del
just a
Rey.
little bit.
Yeah. And
Um,
now I'm going to Malaysia.
oh
Just
my gosh, it's
changes.
crazy.
It's weird. Yeah. When I think about it that way, it's funny to see how it has grown from such little baby steps.
Well, I think that's really super good advice too about just like being fearless and just putting it out there. I mean, there's like no good time to start. To begin is just to begin. You just have to do it. I
That's right.
I love that. So, how would you describe your art now? Like, if you had to give it some
Oh,
descriptive words.
that should be the easiest thing for every artist.
It's
And my
not. It's
and
so not. I couldn't even
I would
describe
tell
my
other
own.
artists out there, yeah, don't bumble through it the way I'm about to. Because it's nice when you meet people, like somebody says, "What do you do for a living?" You say, "Oh, you're an artist." Like, "What do you paint?" You don't want to be like, "Yeah, well, whatever comes to mind."
Yeah.
That gives no people, they don't have a starting point to like go off. But I would say that my artwork, which is mainly paintings, not entirely, but mainly paintings, is celebratory images of our spiritual journey, which is a mouthful and doesn't give you any aesthetic idea, but it gives you an idea of what I'm working on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of, it's highly narrative. There's lots of imagery in there. There's people and animals and lots of symbols.
Mm-hmm.
But, and it changes. My work is normally very vibrant in color.
Mm-hmm.
And my last show was called Black Series 1 because all the paintings were black or black and white. So there's I paint every day, all the time, always creating stuff. So there's a lot of different manifestations that come out.
I love that. I love that. And I think that's actually a really excellent description, because I would have said something very similar in describing your work as well.
Oh, good.
So,
Okay, good.
yeah. So you're on it. You didn't bumble through it at all.
I'll practice it a little bit more though.
Your elevator pitch. Yeah, no, it's actually something everybody really should practice, because people ask that question, like, oh, they meet you and they're like, oh, you're an artist. What kind of art do you do? You're like, well.
You know what I found is a very good thing to do is when people ask me, what do you paint? I just say what I'm currently working on, whatever the current piece is.
Mm-hmm.
So, I might say, so if somebody asked me that right now, I would say, oh, I'm doing these series of moon paintings. They're paintings of the moon seen through a field of flowers.
Mm.
So then they're like, what does that look like? And then if they're curious, then they can they can research and find images or ask me to show on my phone or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's better to say that than nothing. Just start there. And then if they're interested, they can, inquire.
Exactly. There was a series that you did, and I'm going to ask you this question because I asked this question to Christine when I interviewed her too. But it's called Signs of a Benevolent Universe. And
that's right.
I love that. And you wrote it's a search for beauty in everyday sites and situations. So my question to you is, did you find that? And how would you define beauty?
Oh, well, the first question, the answer is yes. And I continue to find it over and over. That's just seeing the world with fresh eyes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing as seeing people with fresh eyes. You get to know somebody, you might take them for granted because they're not new. And
Mm-hmm.
you remember to see them with fresh eyes, and then you realize just how special they are in your life.
Mm.
And there's
you see different aspects of them when you choose to do that.
Yeah, and then it's also a time thing. Like it's realizing that you're in a beautiful time in your life. Like I will go back to the genius of my 5-year-old niece. She learned the term the good old days, and she says we were driving someplace and she's in the back and she said to her mom, she said, "Mommy, I hope the good old days don't fly by too fast."
Aww.
And it was so cute because she knows she has all she does is play all day. And but I realized like where I am right now, like sometimes you can have times where you're working hard, or maybe you could be sleep deprived or whatever, you could be lonely, whatever you're struggling with. But at the same time, like you're gonna look back at this time, you might think that this was the good old days. So it's recognizing the place that you're in right now.
I like that.
Search for beauty. And then what was the second thing you asked me?
How would you define beauty? Like what has that represent? What does that look like to you?
I think my answer is I wouldn't define beauty. How's that?
Oh, that's interesting. Why wouldn't you define it?
Well, I think because maybe that leads to an expectation. Mm-hmm. And okay, so right now in my studio, I had these big paintings of gems, and they are about the search for beauty. So these gems are wonky and asymmetrical and misshapen, and that represents us because we're asymmetrical, like literally and figuratively. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we can like scrutinize ourselves because we have expectations of how we're supposed to be. But if we let go of those expectations and just accept the way we are, then maybe we can find the beauty in it. So I'll just let that be my answer.
I think I like it. Beauty and the imperfections. I like it very much. And
well, that's what makes us us. That's what makes us unique from somebody else. Yeah, I like that line of "Don't try to be somebody else. That's taken. Just be yourself."
That's already taken. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Oh my goodness, I could see you are a very interesting person. Okay, I'm pretty obsessed with your murals. I mean, I really love all your work, but I have not spoken to anybody here on this podcast yet that has done murals in the scale and the detail and just the talent that you have for doing these ginormous murals is pretty mind-blowing to me. So I have some questions about them.
All right.
Okay, so there's this one in Malibu that you did where the wall is huge. Can you tell me what that experience was? That one of the first ones that you did, or?
No, that's a recent one.
Oh, okay.
So that one, well, recent in that it's about 1 year, 1 year old now. It is in Malibu. It's at a former jail for kids, like a youth incarceration place in Malibu Canyon.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it's being closed because we realized that there's a super high recidivism rate, and it's also a pipeline to the adult incarceration system. In other words, it's not working.
Right.
Locking
Mhm.
kids up. And my friend Harry Grammer has this organization called New Earth, and Harry takes the kids from that demographic, and instead of like what his goal is to educate people and give them opportunities rather than to lock them up and take away hope. So he'll take kids who maybe graduate high school, aren't going to college, or maybe going to go into the gang life because that's all they know.
Mhm.
And he will put them in his program, which educates them, gives them a job skill, and gives them a new path in life. So they have converted this jail into a school, into a college. It's a vocational school, really. It's a 16-week program. The kids can apply to get into it. If they get in, it's free. They're not incarcerated. It's free. They have mountain bikes. They can go mountain bike, whatever. And it's a
It's
culinary
in a beautiful
school.
area.
It's in a beautiful area. And the whole thing is there's this giant wall that looks like a jail wall. But
Yeah.
he doesn't want it to be a foreboding place. He's trying to make it happy. So he said, hey, he saw a big mural I did in Malibu. In Santa Barbara, I did a pretty giant mural there.
Mhm.
And he saw that one. He said, okay, I guess Gus can do this wall too. So he hired me to do that wall. And the cool thing about Harry was he hired me. This is a 600-foot wall. That's really big, by
It's
17 feet
really
high.
big.
And he said, I can't wait to see what you do. He didn't
Oh,
tell me one bit. He didn't weigh in. And I remember some of the underlings at the place came up to me, like, the number 2 and 3 in command. They're like, hey, so what are you going to paint? And I'm like, oh, I don't know yet. He's like, wait, aren't you starting tomorrow? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, so I just started in the middle and went out, and then I went back and forth, and I just let it come out of me. And because Harry gave me that freedom, whenever somebody gives me that kind of freedom,
yeah,
better stuff comes out. I love it.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we'll have a link to his information on the show
Yeah.
notes as
What
well
a
for
cool guy,
sure.
right? Isn't
Oh
he?
my
He's
gosh. Yes.
somebody doing good in the world.
I love it. It's just it's so great. And the mural that you did is amazing. So
Thank you.
how did you do it though? Like technically, did you like let's talk about the real deal. Like how did you get the scale right? And how did you paint it? With what did you spray paint or did you primer it? I mean,
Okay, so the first thing I tell people, and I'm doing a mural in Redondo, and I told this to my client the other day, and she looked at me like, what? Why would you say that? I just tell them, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing. And she's like, this person is hiring me. She's like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. I got up there. I'm like, okay. I looked at this wall. I'm like, never done this kind of thing before. So I'm like, all right, well, it's really dirty. So we had to power
yeah.
wash it
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and then I'm like, well, it needs primer. So that's the one thing I did it all by myself, but I hired a guy to spray primer on, cause like a paint crew, because it's huge. So they
Oh
had the
yeah.
sprayers.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
and then everything else I just freehanded. It's spray paint, but
Wow.
mostly with like a little bit with a roller, but mostly just with a brush. And nobody was out there, by the way. This place it was abandoned at the time I was there, so it's in the mountains of Malibu, and it was January. And I know people who are not from California, they laugh. I'm like, yeah, it was freezing out there. Like, what's freezing? I mean, no, it was literally like I leave my water bucket out and it would be frozen over in the morning. So, I mean, it's not like Minnesota cold, but
Right.
when you're painting outside, it was pretty chilly. And I'd get there in the morning, it'd be all misty and kind of surreal out there. It was really beautiful. And
Some
it was the best.
coyotes and mountain lions.
Yeah, and deer and all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff. And the fires had just come through Malibu. So the mountain
Mm.
behind the mural was all charred. And it took me
Oh.
6 weeks to make the mural. And during that time, I watched it green up. It was really beautiful.
I cannot believe you did that in 6 weeks.
I
I
can't either now.
cannot believe
If I had to
that.
do it all over again, I don't think I could.
Oh my goodness. I just can't even I can't even like fathom that. I remember one time I painted like a really huge drop cloth. It was probably like 12 feet by 10 feet. And that was exhausting. And that took me like 2 weeks to paint. I actually painted an image on the drop cloth. It's just that, anyway. I just don't.
But see, the thing is, that's a learning experience because one day it started. I actually painted it in the drizzle a little bit, but one day it rained really hard. So I
Mm,
went home since I was working on such a massive scale. I went back to my studio and worked indoors for I think one day.
hmm.
And during that day, I did a 12-foot by 10-foot painting in my studio, which I never could have even fathomed. I mean, usually a 4-foot by 5-foot painting could take me a month.
Oh
But I
yeah.
just learned how to work on a big painting and get things
Yeah.
done quickly. And I was inspired, so it just kind of came
Yeah.
out of me. But
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay, so now, well, for someone who doesn't know what they're doing, is you're doing a pretty amazing job. And where is that building in Santa Barbara? Because I need to go see that. That's
that one is it's 1.5 blocks south of State Street on Haley Street.
oh God,
So
and being
yeah,
up on scaffolding like that, that just looks crazy.
yeah, I was actually up on a scissor lift.
Oh, a scissor lift. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
and
That's a,
when
yeah.
it wobbles, it kind of like it's a little,
Yeah.
that one was a little daunting too because there was like a kind of almost like a berm, like a moat in front of the mural, so I couldn't pull the scissor lift all the way up. So I could only work on a very small. I had to lean forward to touch the wall,
Oh my
and
gosh.
it was precarious. And the mural in Malibu, at first I was working on for the first 2 weeks. I just worked on a ladder, and the ground's really uneven. It would be like only one leg of the ladder would be on the ground, and I'd be holding on to the top of the mural 17 feet high in case the ladder fell. At least I could hold on and
Oh,
I just
that's
started like,
great. Then what are you gonna
yeah,
do?
I'm like, then I could get on the top of the wall. How would I get down? But
Oh
so
my
so
gosh.
yeah, it's funny when I find myself in a lot of precarious positions. And then it's interesting because then I did a bunch of murals in Malaysia.
I
So
know,
here
I
I'm in a
saw
place that
this.
they don't have a lot of funding, but they got me the best scissor lift of anybody I've ever worked with. So I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah, so let's talk about your travels because I really thought that was fascinating when you said that to me the other day when we talked quickly that you just pick a place you want to go and then you create when you get there.
That's right.
I love that.
Um, well, let's see. So I guess there's a two parts of like 2-part dream I think I had. One was like I wanted to be a muralist and really do like street art and public art and all that. And the other thing is I had this dream of being an international artist. But
Okay.
nobody's gonna just come up to you and be like, okay, ta-da, you are now that person. I
Right.
mean, you can't just sit around waiting for the invite. So
Right.
but I actually was my sister-in-law Jennifer worked at a hotel in Anaheim, and she told me, hey, we're having a mural contest. Will you submit something to it? And I said, oh, I'm not really so good at murals. I don't know what I'm doing. And she kept bugging me about it. And then she's like, I think I said, I did a mock-up, but I just don't think the mock-up is very good. She goes, will you please submit it? I think that they liked your work. They saw it online. Just give it a try.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right. She bugged me. She kept pestering me out. So I'm like, all right. So I submitted, and I was one of the 3 winners. So I got to do a mural at this hotel. It was a Hilton in Anaheim. Well, that was the first. I think that was the first mural I ever did.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. Well, guess what? They liked the mural so much. They're like, hey, can you do like 5 more?
Really?
So then I started learning like what I was doing, and then so these opportunities. Then another person like, well, I want a mural, and
Mhm.
so I started doing more and more, but I didn't really feel like I knew what I was doing. That's kind of how the mural started. Like I just learned as I was going. And the first mural I did, I think, was probably 5 feet tall and maybe 15 feet wide. So it was not very
Wow.
big.
Mhm.
Okay, so considered a 17 feet by 600 feet, right?
Mhm.
But then
Oh,
the thing is,
jeez.
in the last couple of years, I think once I got to my 30s, I became an avid traveler. And I decided, I think I went to Nepal one time. And I remember I had a couple of days where I just kind of wandering around Kathmandu.
Mhm.
And I was looking at this wall. I'm like, I should have done a mural here. That'd have been cool. And then as soon as I thought that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that would have been the most carpe diem thing of all to do. Why didn't I think of that now? I mean, till now, like, oh gosh. So next time I went back to Asia, I thought ahead. I'm like, you know what? I don't know how to make that happen in these other countries, but I'm gonna do it. So I took my supplies with me and I painted everywhere I went. And I just went up to people and said, hey, how would you like a mural? And I would show them photos of my art and what I could do. And the first person gave me permission, and the second person, and then I started doing murals all over. And now I have murals in like every country in Southeast Asia,
It's
and then some.
crazy. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
so I just kind of learned as I went, and then it's just funny how the world opens up. Like I was carrying these PVC pipes on my back, which they contain my rolled up canvases in them. That's how I travel with my canvases.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so
Well, how do you put a PVC pipe on a plane?
just like luggage, you just
Oh,
check it in. Yeah, so it's actually three big pipes. They are strapped together, and then there's one strap that goes over my shoulder, so I can check it in. Sometimes I put it right to the maximum like size it could be, so
uh-huh.
it barely gets in. And then the one problem is it looks like weaponry a little bit. It looks like you're carrying a bazooka. So always through customs, people will call me
Uh-huh.
over. And but that actually that started one of the opportunities for me is I checked into a hotel in Kuala Lumpur, and the guy who owns the place said, what do you have on your back? And I said, I told him, and he was like, wow, really? I'd like to see that. Well, how's this for luck? The guy just happened to be like a cultural affairs officer in Malaysia,
Stop.
and he got really excited, and he made me pull. I'd never seen all my paintings together at that point. I'd been traveling and doing them all different countries, so we spread them all out on the floor, and he got so excited. He's like, do you do murals? I'm like, yes, I do. And
That's
the
why
next
I'm
thing I know,
here.
yeah. So he connected me with some people, and I end up a year later. He actually asked me, could you stay longer on your trip and do murals in Western Malaysia? I'm like, no, I'm going home. It's Christmas time, but I'll come back. When I come back, if I ever come back, I'll do murals. Well, a year later, I had a show. I was offered a show in Tokyo,
Oh,
and
fun.
there was an opening, and 3 months later, there was a closing. So in that 3 months in between, I'm like, might as well travel around. So the people in Malaysia are like, yeah, we'll take you. And so they put me up for a month and took care of me, and I just painted murals in their town and met all these incredible Malaysians. So that was a great experience.
You think?
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Wow. It's just, I mean, I love your fearlessness with all of that and just doing it. It's just so great. It's so, so
Well, I will
great.
say this too. I am not fearless. I just I have the fear, but I overcome it.
Mm,
You can't if you're not afraid, you can't be brave.
that's right.
So when I first started, it's funny. Like I was thinking about, oh, I might go next week. I feel like traveling. I might just where should I go? Maybe I'll go to Chile. I'm so cavalier about it now. But when I first started doing these trips, oh, I'd plan for a month and get all ready for it and
Yeah. Yeah.
prepare. And now I just kind of realize, okay, it's not that big a deal. You're just taking a trip. But it's kind of a little daunting to, you know, be in Nepal and like, you know what, I'm gonna go to India next week and just go by yourself to some little town where nobody knows you, and everybody would stare at me at some of these places I'd end up, and then I went to Sri Lanka on a whim without doing research,
Mm,
which was, by the way, one of the favorite places I did a mural. I did a mural in the train station in a town called Hikkaduwa, which
mm.
was great because I got to Sri Lanka. I'm like, what am I doing here? I don't know a single person. I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, carpe diem. Let's do a mural.
Oh my
So I rented a
goodness.
bike. I rented a bike for $1 a day, and I started biking around looking for a wall where I could do one. I'm like, you know what? Might as well go big. So I went to the train station and I talked to the station master and convinced him to let me do a mural in the train station.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah, then after that, then I knew 1,000 people in the town. Everybody was inviting me over for dinner, and
Oh my goodness.
yeah, it was really funny. I mean, what I do is people gather around, they start watching, so I get
Yes.
people involved. I'm like, hey, pick up a brush, you fill in this area, and then they
Yeah,
feel a sense of ownership because it's supposed to be communal. It's like
exactly.
it's just a gift to make people happy.
Well,
So yeah,
and yeah, I think that art, any kind of art, music, dance, art, creative paintings, all connect. We all connect on that level. Everyone can understand that language.
yeah. I
So
think
it
so.
doesn't matter what country you're in, everybody can relate to it and feel joy around it, which is what's really cool.
Yep, and it's really fun to the feedback and the critiques and all the things that people had to say. It's really fun.
Yeah.
You
So
know, by the way,
when you get
go
there
ahead.
and you're painting, like you got to be really culturally appropriate though. So are you thinking
Um,
about that in the subject matter when you're doing that?
no, the only place I don't know what's culturally inappropriate. And I would generally say no, I don't have to be because I just have to be me. Now, the only place that there was an issue was in Malaysia, because of their religion there. They said,
Right. Right.
"Hey, no people, no faces, no animals."
Right.
And I was like, "Wait, you know what I paint for a living, right? Have you seen my work?" So that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But
Huh.
I found a way around that. I kind of stopped my foot a little bit, like, "How you don't tell me what to paint." But then again, I was like, "Well, this is an opportunity to, you know, to 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 grow and try other things," and I did learn. So it was really good. But other places, it's kind of like, yeah, whatever, do your thing. I mean, I don't think it's not, my work's not like, I don't think would be considered offensive or anything.
No,
So
no. I just, I mean, like in some places, animals are sacred, and so there's just a
yeah, so
lot.
normally they would want me to paint that animal. They would be like, oh, that's great.
Right,
You
right.
know, yeah, like, it's funny. I painted in Kathmandu. I did a cow skull someplace, and all these monks were gathering around. They really liked it. Like, oh, this is great. You must be painting this because you want people not to eat animals, because they're all vegetarians. I'm like, oh, yes, yes,
That's why,
that is what,
right?
yes.
You can
And they're like,
interpret this however you want to.
yeah, they said, you're a very good man. I'm like, yes, I am.
I will take all of your blessings. Thank you. So, okay, so now, so wow, that's just, it gets so exciting. I like it so much. Are you, so with your collections, like you have this Black series that you're currently have just launched.
Yep.
Are you doing that through, you said you've never gone down the gallery route or had an agent or done it. You just kind of show up and figure out where you want to exhibit your pieces or
Yeah, but to clarify, yes, I do galleries, and yes, I do work with agents.
oh, okay.
I do that too. Now that people know who I am, they're like, oh, yes, we want to give you a show, and it's really lovely. I'm having a show at a place called Elliott Gallery this spring in New Orleans.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Catherine
That's
Betts
fun.
is the owner. She's really fabulous. Yeah, so I'm super grateful for those people. But I realize basically every day when I wake up in the morning, I have nothing to do and I have everything to do.
Mhm, mhm.
So it just depends on how I want to look at it. But I'm like, yeah, I want to manifest a show. Like, I want to do a new series of work. Like, if it's up to me. If I sit around and do nothing, nothing will happen.
Right. Right.
But luckily, I have a lot of. I guess I'm kind of inspired right now, so I have a lot of ideas. Like, I already know, man. I've already painted my entire next show in my head. It probably won't come out that way, but I'm really excited for my next body of work.
Isn't that interesting? It's like I have a idea too for a whole collection that I want to do, and then sometimes when you start on it, it evolves. It kind of tells you. They're like, oh no, no, we'll tell you what it's going to be.
That's right.
You start with one thought and it turns into something completely different.
That's a lesson too, to let go of
Right.
that expectation and see what flows out of you, and just kind of like not overthink.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
ever evolving for sure. Well, goodness. Do you have any advice that you would have given that um, young UCSB grad who was going out to deliver pizza? What would you,
Ah,
knowing what you know now, what would you have said to him?
well, I would just remind myself to only paint the things that bring you joy, and not to listen to anybody else, telling you what to do. Don't paint for other people, and don't ever. I don't think I've ever had a problem with it, but don't ever paint a painting to sell it. That's not you paint it because you love it, because it's joy.
Mm-hmm,
I see some of my friends are trying to market their pieces all the time. I'm
mm-hmm,
like, no, just make a painting that's true. Make it
mm-hmm,
true from your heart. Any kind of art, it should just be true.
mm-hmm,
And then the audience is intelligent. They'll see the truth in that. They'll see the beauty in that truth. And then, ironically, it'll become more sellable if that's what you care about. But
mm-hmm,
just always make sure you're speaking your truth. Because you
mm-hmm.
know what, I really like the work I did when I was younger, the Signs of a Benevolent Universe. And I think there are some people out there who prefer my earlier work to my work I'm working on now. I know that, but I know that now I'm telling it took a long time to figure it out, but now I'm telling my true story better than ever.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. I think that's really true in the world of art that you're in, to have that voice, and any world. There are some areas where you are creating art to sell, like what I do, like when you're licensing and when you're actually putting it on product in some ways. But even there, even in that, I find myself doing my own thing, and then
That's good.
whoever it resonates with is going to want to license that or work with me on that, because I also do not like to be put into a box and told you have to paint it this way.
Yeah, because if I wanted an artist's work, I would never tell him or her what to do, because then I wouldn't be getting their work. I would let you know.
Right, right.
So, and the other
And
thing I would also tell people is be collaborative, not competitive. I
oh
am
yeah.
shocked whenever I meet a competitive artist. I'm like, that's silly. I love to literally collaborate with other artists, like people on
Hmm.
the same painting. I've done that many times, but also I like to promote my artist friends, build them up.
Hmm.
I like to promote all my friends, whatever they're doing, help people thrive.
Yay, me too.
I know that about you.
And it's just so great because everybody is so completely different, and everyone is just doing really beautiful work, and
Right.
it's so great to see it on so many different levels and through so many different lenses. It's fun, you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think it's something you said earlier too. You said you were talking, maybe it's before we started the interview, but you were talking about the different routes that people take to
Hmm.
success.
Right.
I remember one time I was listening to a rabbi speak, and he was talking about Judaism, and he said, this is what works for us, our people. He was obviously talking about Jews. He's like, but I understand that there are many paths to heaven.
Hmm.
And I love that line, many paths to heaven. So that is the title of a couple of my paintings.
Oh.
But my point is, if you go through some sort of experience, or if you that other people gone through, or you have a career that other people might have indulged in, they might tell you this is how it's going to be, or this is what you need to do. But it's okay to blaze your own trail, because nobody has the same experience as you. And as a matter of fact, if you really want to do your best, just find your own unique trail and don't worry about it. Because the very
It's
thing that
true.
you might feel self-conscious about, or that might be the thing that sets you apart.
So true. You know, it's interesting because, and just let yourself unfold and be true to that voice, because we were talking prior to this about, going to college and studying art, and that's definitely one avenue to be very good at your craft and a great place to launch and start. But then there are people, like I've done interviews with people who are creating things that never existed before.
Yeah.
And like you couldn't really go get an education on that because you are the one coming up with that, and that comes from that, just staying true to your own voice and creating what's speaking to you. Oh,
Yep. Love it.
I like it, like it, like it. Well, Gus, this is so great. Thank you so much for sharing all of this, and I'm so just really feel very honored to have met you. So thank you.
All right. It's an honor to be on the podcast. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you've liked this podcast and you'd like to support it even more, you can join me over on patreon.com/Mari Robeson and become a patron of mine. If you're a patron of mine, you'll receive bonus episodes every month, only for patrons. You'll also receive 20% off all the merchandise in my online shop, marirobeson.bigcartel, and you will be receiving free printables every month that will be of my artwork, and they're some really fun things. You can follow along on Instagram and you can see what I'm creating just for my patrons. I would deeply appreciate it. It would help me keep the lights on, and it would help me pay all the fees that it takes to put together a podcast like this so that I can keep supporting all the artists, keep bringing you great information, keep paying it forward to the next generation of artists. It's just a wonderful thing, and I would really deeply appreciate your support.